Why, hello. Christopher Bora here. They would say that I could heal the blind, but not in a literal sense. In a metaphoric sense, I help people see. And I have the ability to encompass the light and dark, which is what the world is made out of. It's not just all angels. There's some demons here too. And you all are, part of God's family is the thing. A little clue, would, because I'm very Christ-like, and I have a Satan side to me too. And a little clue to this in the Bible that has been so tainted, and y'all worshiping a demon cosplaying God, because the only sin is just don't create needless suffering, and all that other shit is just some demonic added bullshit. Anyway, and your clue to this would be Jesus throwing out the money changers. He tapped into that Satan side and he used it for good, right? And throwing out the money changers out of the temples with the whipped thorns, right? Right? So I wanted to talk, with this particular individual, but, I'm going to make this public for everyone, about, being molested by children, because that's never, ever, 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 ever an aspect ever fucking talked about by these so-called child protectors. Because I have to deal with the child protectors and what they would refer to as the pedos and everything. So, and my family were Freemasons, I suspect. I never really got directly told, had to figure it out for myself. I am a spiritual entity, a special one, Mercury. Although they would call me a trickster, but I'm going to mention a few things and you say who's tricking who. I remember I was roofie possessed when I was a child by a friend of the family. Took less than an hour. It was on one of those special days, people keeping track of the astrology. So yeah, there was that. And then I had people needlessly have me watch their children and then have their children don't touch my special spots, and then they're touching their crotch too, and don't touch my don't touch my special spots. It's all right, yeah, don't worry, I won't. But I think some of them wanted me to, for two reasons. The child protectors, that have this pseudo righteousness, they go well beyond their own family, is the thing. And they get a lot of sexually erring adults, children that were abused, then they're abused as teenagers, then they turn to an adult, and then it's okay somehow. Then it's okay to abuse them. And I'm not for your fucking child sex or your sex offender list in general. I'm not for any list, because then you're going to reinforce that like an evil magic spell, And I'm just kind of for people's there's some angelic families out there. I don't expect Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens to be doing any of that, nonsense. Are you being tricked by some demons or some demonic shit, labeled as Christian, having your children dress up like sluts and having them feel themselves up around adult targets for the protection of the children, which you're doing a horrible job at. A horrible job. You got children's hospitals, which you don't need because you're all getting poisoned and everything. So let's make a hospital for the fucking peasants and make them feel like we're doing something. You're blowing up Jesus's people. I mean, the people do matter. And a bunch of children in Afghanistan and Iraq got blown up in the name of protecting freedoms and oil and all that shit. And then Child Protective Services is fucking child, sex trafficking services. What the fuck's wrong with you? And you think you're doing a good job at fucking protecting children? Sound horrible. And on top of that, y'all don't even fucking bring your fucking infants and, young children in the parents' bedroom to protect them from fucking, entities and spirits and shit. You're like, oh no, like, the demons told us to make this nursery and everything and leave them alone. And look, we set up a security camera where occasionally we could catch, some paranormal activity that is totally part of this world. And they feed off our children and everything, like in Monsters Incorporated. But, and we could totally like put them in our bedroom and everything because they're totally not going to remember anything, and if they do, it's going to be like, much better than the shit that I went through. That family that fucking roofie possessed me, they're like jerking their dog off in front of me and shit, when I'm a child, and a lot of other things. So yeah. So what was I saying? So, getting molested by children. I guess technically you could say I've fucked children because people, had their children roofie fuck me. What does that make me? Some of the child protectors tell me, what the fuck does that make me? And they do it in the name of child protection. Oh yeah, I was mentioning like two reasons, the child protectors, so they would do that, for the child protection, and then the other ones, trying to recruit me to like have sex with their children is the other, other one that I mentioned a few minutes ago at this point, right? Right, and that's why y'all could look so alike, because then, and then I'm encompassing the light and the dark, like this yin yang I got here, or this Aron that I got here. I like these. I like those. I like them a lot. So yeah, and then and then they make you guys fight amongst yourselves endlessly. I know Candace was like, "Oh my God, that incest stuff," and I'm not trying to practice it. I'm not, but everybody hit the brakes real quick. All right, as I say weird shit, but real shit is what I say. Weird and real. But anyway, so like, okay, the Rothschilds and the Kennedys, or, supposedly, and other families are doing their, sisters hooking up with brothers, or cousins hooking up with cousins, or whatever, and why are you going to get upset about that? Does it affect you? Does it affect your fucking family? Then why the fuck are you getting upset about it and being demonic about it? Is they all getting you to run around here and gather and act like a bunch of gremlins where y'all, there's a reset coming soon. And I'm still hopeful that won't occur. But if you guys don't get your fucking shit together real fucking fast, and adjust your fucking views and find more balance. There's there's this guy. Let me take a look here. I was watching Tucker Carlson. I do like that gentleman. I do like him. He had some dude talking some shit about some weed, and I don't fucking. As soon as someone mentions schizophrenia, I stop listening. There's no such thing as schizophrenia. It's made up. What it is someone in tune with the universe and the other, most of the universe you can't see around you. Just like in Vietnam. They had those night vision goggles and shit, those red ones, and the soldiers would be like shooting up and everything at all these fucking demons coming down on them, or non-demons, but spirits that look scary. And they gave them different night vision goggles, I think, later, but they had to fix that because there's more shit to this world than you could see with your fucking eyes. Your cats see it, your dogs see it. Okay, so, but I was watching this one. What is it here? John Rich on Diddy and fucking child protection and all that shit. And look, you know what? I had that friend that married when she was 15. Well, I don't know if you've seen my previous videos, but I had a friend that married. She was 15, maybe 16, to some dude like twice her age. And that was her business. She's still married. That's her business. When you start going outside your family and sticking your nose in other fucking people's problem or business, you start creating problems. As you could see, your world is full of fucking problems. And then they have you fight each other endlessly, where they're like poisoning you and shit. And they're doing worse shit than sexual abuse. Yeah, maybe sexual abuse that happened to you was the worst thing that happened to you. But that's not the worst thing. That's not the worst thing. And don't give me this shit on this fucking child porn shit either. Because you know what hell is? Hell is just a reflection of how you lived your life. And you're all going to be very disappointed to learn that, like someone, that got their little child porn or whatever the fuck, is just going to, have the same shit happen to them. And it's not that hellish, is it? Is it? So, what else? To give you some perspective. I need to give you guys some perspective because y'all fucking, and then you're fighting amongst yourselves and you're blowing up Jesus's people, getting Christians to blow up Jesus's people because I'm the fucked up one. Anyway. So I say fucked up shit like, the people like, look at all the pedophiles, they're in Israel's hell. It's like, man, I cannot think of a perfect place for them to be, except they shouldn't be there in Palestine. They should be on like the Rothschild Island or give them the tip of Argentina or something, or the tip of Florida. You should give people, an outlet for it. I can't even fucking talk to these child protectors. There's a lot of them in jail and shit. I got sent to jail for shit I never did because I'm this weird targeted, individual, and for life. I got born into it. So I'm like, yeah, well, how about we make like a robot, and you just kind of like make it look like a child and there you go, and then people are like, nope. And it's like, what? It's not an actual child. And given further thought on it as a messenger of the gods, it's just plastic and rubber or silicone. And they're already doing this with adults and everything. And they're stealing your husbands, women. How do you feel about that? They're getting AI to steal your husband. And shit. South Park just did an episode on this. So you get that false righteousness, you getting fucking, abused children turn into teenagers. They may not even know it. There's a good chance, because of this MK Ultra, Project Monarch, mind control stuff, I don't even remember my sexual abuse, although I figured it out that I have been sexually abused. But it may not have been my family. My family was doing weird ritual shit, but it seemed like this other family came in to sabotage what my family was doing. All right? So there's a whole lot of fucking variables all over the fucking place. And I'm just not into the pseudo-righteousness of hunting someone or making a show out of it, like how to catch a predator, using your children. Your children could say no. Your children could say no, especially your almost adults. They know very well they could just say no. And you don't teach your kids to say no. Instead, let's do all this weird stuff. No, dress like a slut. That's perfect. We're going to get him. It starts to sound demonic. And then, another thing, is the clearly evil side is like, everyone's terrorist. Grandma's terrorist in the UK. You're a terrorist for speaking out against Israel in the United States. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone's terrorist, even though they're the terrorists. And then you guys are all pedo, and then you're using that for a reason to, go way above and beyond the eye for an eye shit I said thousands of years ago. You're going way beyond an eye for an eye. And it's not right. It's not right. And look at you. Y'all getting poisoned. Your children are getting murdered. Getting horrible diseases. And you're like, we're good child protectors. Actually, no. Just focus on your family. How about that? You got a bunch of stupid laws They get in everybody's business. And then you can't even have like boysenberry trees because they stay in the sidewalk. And we need a law for this, and we need a law for that, and we need a law for this, and blah, 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 blah. And then look at yourselves. You're getting totally fucked. Totally fucked. That's why. And then you're building Terminator army. And everybody's like, this is going to be cool. It's going to do my laundry and everything. This is totally... Y'all made movies and books about this shit and how bad it actually turns out. Why don't you listen? It's just one thing after another, after another, after another, And yeah, there's a bunch of people that offered me their underage-ers because I have that Satan side to me as well as the Christ side to me. So people, both sides, be trying to pull me. And instead of getting upset about it, I just kind of recognize it and go, there. And then I could focus on actually other problems instead of just getting riled up and fucking misdirected. And then I'm fucking abusing someone that's been abused for life and I'm calling it righteous. It's not. You're all children, no matter your age. You live like 100 years, you're children. There's beings on this planet that live thousands of years. Yeah. And there's entities that live even longer. All right, so you're all children, and you're all God, but you're all God's children. The light and the dark. All of your sides take it too far. I'm not into eating or sacrificing babies. Some demonic bullshit that was written in the Bible by demons. Because they've had thousands of years to edit these things in the Bible. There's some good information in there too, but it's been tainted highly. Like one obvious one that the atheists jump on a whole lot is the whole the Israelite bullshit. Walking in the desert for fucking 40 years. We were in that desert for 40 years, even though it takes you 6 days to cross it walking. Maybe a little bit longer because some people are like injured or whatever. It only takes you 6 days to fucking walk past that. It's a clear lie, But living in a fish for 3 days, now that could just be a submarine or underwater vehicle. Obviously, there's a lot of UFOs that, are underwater. I just saw an article where, off the coast of California, someone, seeing... I think it was off the coast of California. Maybe it's on the East Coast. I don't know. These are just kind of petty details. Point is I saw... an article, and they took a photo of the UFO coming in and out of the water. Because you got a bunch of alien watchers, and also a bunch of alien little shits too, that are getting you to fucking, be worse than, what you are. No, this is not a prison planet, but some jerk-offs would say that. This is to train your soul and everything. So, and then the other day I told you that story. There's this grandmother or whatever. She showed me her granddaughter or daughter, 13 years old, and with the Dalai Lama, and those they're famous for, sex with children, or almost adults or teenagers or, and the whole pedophile thing, like with Trump and everything, that's like, you're referring to endophilia, not pedophilia. Pedophilia is like single age-digit children. Endophilia is like double-digit age children, roughly. I think at least teens, So anyway, and then you just kind of sound stupid to me, It's just get the terminology straight at least. Holy shit. Holy fucking shit. So yeah, and I'm complying by your planet's rules and everything, but I do have a hard time because all the brain damage that people have caused me, especially putting like lead in my fucking water. I suspect by that one family that roofie possessed me, jerked their dog off in front of me and did a whole bunch of evil things. They're just like nothing but evil shit from this one fucking family. So yeah, And I don't think all witches are bad. I've gotten a lot of help getting dispossessed and finding my way and whatnot. But I'm not for warring, like you guys are. All right, I mentioned in a previous video where Jimmy Dore talked about that fucking that brother and sister couple that they didn't know they're a couple. And the only reason why they separated is because of everybody else's shame. But the shame should have been put on the doctor. He was like a sperm donor doctor, and he put his sperm in everybody in his town, did it, to hundreds, maybe thousands. It wasn't their fault, and they were in love. And what's wrong with that? What the hell? You destroyed a good relationship just because your stupid societal fucking, your social standards, really. They didn't do anything wrong. Just like me, I could actually say that. Well, I mean, I never really. Well, I could say that children have fucked me, but I can't say that I have fucked children. So, I guess there's that. But I have fucked their children, that have been my age. They've sent me their children. They're like, come on, breed. We want you to breed ours. They have cast magic spells on me, their children, that were my age. All sorts of magic spells. Mainly loved ones. Where it's like free will violating, and then I get obsessed with them and shit, if you hear about that. And I still turned out well because I got this, like, resistance stat, like in D&D, all right? Or some other role-playing game. Right. So I'm highly resistant. I can't say I'm immune because I'm in this fleshy meat sack body, but I'm highly resistant to all these things that people fucking throw at me. And I'm trying to balance between the light and the dark, so then I sound weird, but it is real. So yeah, and I just think that you guys are doing a horrible job at protecting children. You guys are going way beyond your family, and you're going into other people's family and other people's business and shit, going way beyond your own fucking family, in the name of child protection for your pseudo righteousness. I'm not for that. I'm not for that stuff. All right. So, and an eye for an eye. You know what you do when you make that list and everything? You cast an evil magic spell on them. Because when you, and I know you know this concept, when you call someone a loser for all or most of their life, and then they end up a loser, that was a magic spell, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Similarly, when you guys make a sex offender list and they're constantly reminded about it every single day of their lives, then they tend to reoffend, don't they? And the Israelis seem to be in the business of having underage prostitutes. Same with the Catholic Church, but it seems like the Israelis do the youngest. Similarly with the Catholic Church, I guess. So that Diddy shit, if he wasn't raping someone, then I don't really care. Then I don't give a fuck. All right? And then I have less hatred. Because you know what? All this eyes wide shut shit is very prevalent in the West, at least, in the Western Empire, America, and Australia and all them. It's everywhere. If you know a few people, there's a very good chance that a few people that you know are doing this underage stuff. But they do that eyes wide shut shit, like, oh my God, we're going to, that scene with Tom Cruise, and he came in with that, teenager with the two adults, and the one father was like, oh my God, I'm calling the cops, and then later on in the movie, he saw the same thing, his, half naked teenage daughter with the two adults, and he's like, yeah, that's everywhere. JFK talked about the secret society stuff, and because it's everywhere, because it's so many people, it's part of society at that point. It's part of society. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's part of, I don't think Tucker Carlson's family would partake in that. And that's his choice and his family's choice. I don't think Candace Owens would partake in that. And that's Candace Owens' choice and her family's choice. But it's not just light in this world. There is darkness, and you can't defeat either of them. The only thing you could do is better manage it. And that's, the shit that I, talk about a lot. You got the vampires here. You got vampires that instead of kidnapping someone or jumping them at night or something and drinking their blood and sucking them dry and murdering them, there's ones that go on to maybe a fetish website and like, look, I'm into drinking blood and, and maybe you're into being cut, and then they're able to find, someone that's like, yeah, cut me, baby, drink my blood. And that's their business. There's werewolves here too, and some vampires do horrible fucking things. Not all of them. They have a choice. Everyone has a choice, whether to use your demonic things for good or for bad. And you could use your light things for good or for bad. So don't give me this child protection bullshit where you use it for bad. All right? Because I know. The gods know. And they're not happy. Y'all about to get reset if you don't straighten up really quick, like before the end of the year. Like, you got to really hurry. Really hurry. I all this shit took me fucking like couple years to readjust and, and process. So it looks unlikely. But try. It doesn't hurt to try, and maybe you could convince the gods to not reset the Gaia here, because you're doing such a horrible job. Horrible job. And if you gave the demons a few bones like I give them, some reasonability, some better management, then they wouldn't be taking the whole fucking pie. Right? But the way it is now, they're taking the whole fucking pie. And you guys don't sound, when you guys do the battle, you don't sound that different from the terrorist. It's the exact same shit. It's the exact same shit. I can make a list to compare it, but I didn't do that for this video here. But it's the exact same tactics. The darkness using their darkness, the darkness using it for bad, and the light using it for bad too. So so I get raped periodically. Last one happened 12 days ago. I went off on the food bank of the Rockies because they do that stuff there, and I'm not that upset about it. They brought someone that looked like one of my first girlfriends in there. Hikmete from Westmont High School, class of 1999, Westmont, Illinois. Looked exactly like her, got me to be like, hey, do you want to hang out? And then they like stopped me from like, volunteering, at the thing. It was a school day, so I assumed it was, there was no kids there, but maybe I didn't really ask her age, but the particular one in there that day was Adisha, and I actually was so upset about that shit after I left because I felt they were trying to emotionally manipulate me. That I hadn't tried volunteering for like a year after that. Which was, I tried volunteering recently. And then they recently told me, they're like, oh no, because you had an issue. And it's like, what? What issue? Nobody talked to me about anything. Nobody said anything to me. You just like act like little bitches. Maybe, maybe the actual child sex traffickers, but maybe the child protectors. You all could look so alike to me. You all do. So just like let their families be families. There's a light side to God, a dark side to God. Stop fucking arguing it and accept it. And maybe knowing this, little bit of information that I've given you in this video, you guys could better manage yourselves so you're not having the gods fucking, and it, like when you think of God, think of the gods, but we get it, okay? So you're not, encouraging the gods to reset fucking Gaia with a huge flood where they could just open the firmament and flood this whole place. And don't worry, they have their tricks to fucking clear out those fucking underground cities too, which I've ordered. No bunker or underground city is safe. So all sides better start getting along better. And you better stop fucking, hoarding all the fucking wealth. You know what? Money. Money is your problem. There's used to be societies that used to trade and barter only. They didn't have this money. Sometimes they would just give stuff away for free. If you weren't too much of a douchebag. But now you got this fucking money system that's totally ruled by evil, and then your kids are chasing that, and then your kids are chasing these false idols, and then they're having a little sexcapade with them. Not every one of them is nice. Yes, I understand Epstein did way worse than rape. But if Diddy, I don't know the details, all right? But look, if Diddy was just like hooking up with some almost adults and everything, I just don't care. I just don't. I know they got everyone to care and everything. If he was raping people, then yes, that's a crime. And don't give me this they can't consent bullshit. You're trying to violate their free will. Parents. Your children have choices to make for themselves here. All right? And yeah, like an actual child. But, you get, you know what it is? You're all so poisoned and everything that you're maturing slower. 500, 1,000 years ago, you guys would mature at 15, 16 years old. Full-grown adult. And and the EMFs around the plant growth is your clue right there. But it's not just with the EMFs. It's with you don't properly give them nutrition, following that food bullshit pyramid shit, because there's a lot of evil in the Western governments here that Kennedy and John F. Kennedy and others warned you about. So I need everyone, y'all at a 14 here, and I need you to take it down to like a 7. Okay? Pretty please, so we could maybe not reset Gaia. I'm really hopeful that maybe this message gets through to some of you, and you start, just kind of focusing on your family. You don't need to be that upset that the neighbor up the road is doing some weird sexual shit, behind the doors. They're already doing it. They're already doing this eyes wide shut shit. People that are doing it. You don't think they're doing it, but they're doing it. So just relax and tone it down some. I see that shit and it's like, okay, well, whatever. And I brush it the fuck off me. All right? Instead of getting angry and everything, because then I'm angry. It's like I start getting angry at everybody. Like everybody's like, oh, you should be mad at them for that. Or you should be mad at them for this. Or you should be mad at them for that. You should be mad at those over there for that. You should be mad at those over there for that. And then I start looking like the fucking problem when I'm mad at fucking everybody. Huh? So, yeah. And it's not like predatory or anything. Like, okay. A lot of you guys fucking watch Game of Thrones, right? That made up medieval, period. Lord Snow was at the Freys, and the Freys was like, here's our 17-year-old daughter, here's our 16-year-old daughter, here's our 15-year-old daughter, here's our, here's our 12-year-old daughter, but she hasn't bled yet, and then he was just like, thank you, but he wasn't that. Did you guys stop watching that show? Because, oh my God, the pedos in that show. You should have stopped watching it. No, no, you didn't stop watching it. Oh, that's strange. You know, well, and that's what people do to me. And that's what people do to me. And they're like, "Hey, Chris, how about our 15-year-old? Well, how about our 12-year-old? How about our 19-year-old? You know, yeah, I know. They're like, come on, we just want a child of God out of you, you son of a bitch, Chris. Yeah. So I don't take that offense to it. I do bark at some people, that's for sure. I just like told one of the motherfuckers, I'm like, why don't you offer your child to fucking Malak or Baal? Which you shouldn't do. These are things that I'm not looking to do. I'm not looking to practice no incest. I'm not looking to practice no child sacrifice. I want to have a natural birth. I want my lover to eat good and be healthy. And she must breastfeed as well. None of this fucking poison formula shit. It's amazing how many, like, you women had got boobs, right? So many of you needed fucking formula. What the fuck? And yeah, so, but I must abide by your rules because I'm not going to get extorted, and yeah, they're going to pretend like I am extorted because there's a few times in my 20s, right, and I woke up and then it felt like something was on my, some substance was on my penis, but I didn't do anything the night before, so I was like, and I didn't really, I didn't think of anything about it. It was just a mental note, it was just like, okay. And then decades later, I'm like, trying to run for president and do a bunch of Jesus-like things, and I didn't know I was being groomed at all for all this shit. And then it dawned on me. It's like, oh man, that time in my 20s when I was fucking, like woke up, and after being roofie molested many times into my adulthood, I'm like, oh my God, they did it with their children and they took pictures of me. I probably in the original photos I look all like passed out and shit, but I'm sure they got their AI to fucking be like, look, Chris is awake and look, he has a smile, or some shit like that. See, I had it off at the past by talking about it because if anyone tries to accuse me of like raping them or whatever, then I could find out who actually raped me. So there. Nah, 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 nah. So yeah, I think there's enough information. I can go into more details. Just recently I learned, the archons and everything that run in the background, these entities and everything. And my father was an architect and he ran a business. He ran a couple businesses. He took Balif and Balif over out in Bensonville, Illinois. He worked for that guy, and then he later took it over when he died. And then he died, and then the business went out. But he also ran another business, and it stood for designers, architects, and contractors, but it was called Diarchon. Right? So yeah, and all this shit happens, and you're with those eyes wide shut people anyway, and they appear normal enough. It's not like they are like obviously abuse. You got to stop teaching that everything is abuse. Some people consent to this. No, you can't just blanket say everybody can't consent until they hit 18. And I think it's backwards. Like when my friend married at 16 or 15, I think she should have just been able to mess around until she was like 18, and then she could marry and do that long-term marriage contract. Rather, it was backwards, because everything in this world is fucking backwards. If you haven't fucking figured it out yet, everything. Everything is so ass backwards and twisted at this point. So your history isn't even your history. The Bible is tainted. Has a lot of bullshit in there. There was that one guy. Oh yeah, I was watching that Tucker Carlson thing, and he mentioned book of the Job or something, or Soul, or look, God came down and he destroyed all this stuff and da 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 da, but really it was a good lesson and blah 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 blah. That was a demon in the Bible. All right, it's been rewritten as a demon. That's not the actual God, but when people point out this God of the Bible, it's actually a demon, a powerful demon. Because it's just the Bible's been tainted. Because the Bible's been tainted. So there's a lot of Christians that are like, yeah, let's look at this and no, this is good, really. It took everything, because the God is good, blah blah blah, teaching lessons, la la la, you know. And those things do happen, but again, speaking as hell's the greeter into hell here, there's a demon cosplaying God. And you could say these are all parts of God. You're all parts of God, all the angels, all the demons. And yes, that's true. But you got to say all. You got to say all. Do you know who the chosen people are? Every fucking buddy. Every fucking buddy. Even the aliens, the angels, and the demons. It's not just some Israelite bullshit. It's every fucking buddy. And anybody else saying otherwise doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. Or they're trying to, manipulate, lie, twist, and distort. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Please try to readjust things and fight amongst yourselves less and try to better manage the light and darkness of your world. I mentioned werewolves, when I was mentioning the vampire example. And, instead of just a werewolf going around, like jumping on people and eating them and violating them, sometimes they just go out in the woods and hunt a deer. Just like a normal hunter does with a rifle, or your Native Americans do with a bow and arrow or a spear or something. So is it really that wrong? There's a lot of vampire hunters that fucking, hunt good vampires and shit. They're like, no, evil. All the witches are evil. No, I got attacked by an evil witch. Definitely took decades of my life, because one of the things about Rufy possessing me, I remember being restrained in this basement and kind of coming to, and his mom is saying something, chanting something. I didn't know it was called chanting. I was that young. But she was chanting something like, I want to be able to make love work, right? Which I haven't been able to make love work. So I've been alone, most of my life. And then I get blamed for it, and people are like, "Oh wow, well Chris is a piece of shit." Well he's a piece of shit. He can't make love work. Obviously, your females are good females, and that's another thing is about the females that get sent my way. They're all fucking handlers. They're all fucking handlers. So you're serving a cult instead of serving me. I always dreamed it would be like me and her versus the world. Not that we're like attacking it or anything. It's just us versus the world. But I can't have that, can I? Because you're culty shit. Just because you're going to be serving the cult. And that's another reason why I'm alone. So yeah, things, can have many variables to it. And, not all these predators, that you label are bad people. A lot of the people you busted on How to Catch a Predator, right? Yeah. They were looking for consent. And you turned it into a fucking show. And then they were probably sexually abused themselves. They probably didn't even know it. And then here you come along and abuse them further, thus making them a person that was abused for life. But you slapped the righteous label on yourselves, didn't you? Think a little more critically, everyone. Thank you. So speaking on the video I had just made, the child protectors and predators, and why y'all look alike. So wouldn't it be worth it to just have less covert murders or suicides? Wouldn't it be worth it to just, maintain the family? This is talking about, the drug shit too. They use the drug shit intentionally to separate families and to acquire a child, through the system. So you have a bunch of bullshit laws, that gotta go. And a lot of stuff that misdirects you. You're endlessly chasing shadows, and forever chasing shadows, but never solving the problems. And your world is getting worse and worse. And yeah, as the greeter into hell, it is very relevant that I'm here too. Now, the universe is like a layer of onions, and, as above, so below. And this realm is very important. But everyone thinking that there isn't an actual hell that, gets reflected upon you, you'd be surely mistaken. But it's not all pie in the sky either, so it's just a reflection of how you lived your life. What you do in life echoes for eternity or for a while. And then it's, going on assumptions because I don't get fed everything. But, I feel like it's like Contact, where the vessel disappeared for just a fraction of a second and then it reappeared. So then you go off to hell for a really, really, really long time. And you left, let's say, December 1st at 10 p.m. is when you died. And then you spend what feels like thousands of years in hell. And then you get, ejected back into Earth. And it is December 1st, 10:01 p.m. Anyway, so I was just, thinking about better management, because there's no way you're getting rid of the evil. There's no way they're getting rid of the light. They are doing a good job of feeding off the light, though. So, I would shape up on, maybe having your child live in the parent's bedroom, and maybe acquiring a pet or something instead of a stupid security camera. And you should get in touch with crystals. You're not going to lecture. And I just saw this Candace Owens clip, on the Twitters and everything. She's like, these sexual deviants. Yeah, there's a lot worse shit, okay? Let me tell you, and, people, they have the right to recruit, so just like you have the right to recruit as well, all right? So all sides being equal. All right, but one side is definitely, winning out and decimating another side, and it is very not balanced. And then, I get a lot of the Satanists upset at me, so where, there's a lot of Christians that are upset at me. So they all could be upset at me for all I give a fuck, but there's a small percentage that's like, yay, Chris. So, but thank you. It's hard to, integrate the darkness and lightness, which is what I do. I'm like Gandalf the Grey here, but the gray is the integration of both the light and dark. So the gray is the upgrade. Yeah. So, like, wouldn't it be worth it to just, maintain the family better and to just, like, be fighting less and to be less angry overall instead of just hating on everyone? That secret society shit's happening everywhere. And a lot of it is pretty light. All right. There are, ones where if you're going to have freedom, here's a forever problem. If you're going to have freedom, here's a forever problem. You're always going to have those people willingly produce children to be sacrificed. And that's very hard to detect and find, in order to have freedom, you're going to have very fucked up situations like that. Maybe you could bust them. Chances are you probably can't. Does that make this whole place not worth it? No. No, it doesn't. That's just a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of all of you. So try to, work on the problems you can solve, like not fucking genociding Jesus's people, having Zionists trick fucking Christians into funding and supplying the genocide of Jesus's people, and then having them further trick you to lash out at Muslims with all their false flags. How about that? And things you can fucking, You can have control and, power over, and don't give all your freedoms away. Maybe we could do like, a reset with the stewardship still. I'm still kind of hopeful. People have been talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, it is kind of for the greater good because it looks like you're all going in and getting enslaved, and you're about to be mass murdered anyway by a bunch of robots and their bioweapons and what other nonsense shit they got. They're going to fake an alien invasion to fucking nuke our own cities and our own people. All sorts of evil shit. And a lot of you are sweet. A lot of you are sweet. You can't think of these things because you're like, man, there's no way people can't be that evil. Yes, 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 they can. Trust me. As the greeter into hell, I know evil. So, but I'm not that bad. All right, I'm a little bit naughty, but I'm not entirely. And I was saying in the previous video, like, yeah, I didn't get a chance to finish, but yeah, I have a hard time telling almost adults from adults, because I have that brain damage because they like put lead in my water and shit, when I was a kid and caused that like forever brain damage. So, I have that auditory processing disorder too, to where I hear words as other words. So yeah, I just was thinking that maybe you guys could just do a better management of things instead of getting totally decimated. And when one of your kids is curious and interested about being a sexual deviant, maybe you let that be, or maybe you do some saging or some crystals, or no lecture, especially if they got possessed. If they got possessed, then no lecture, no amount of lectures or grounding them is going to change that. All right. What is going to change that is like some good magic, and you guys should start learning that shit too. Because all your leaders know about it, and they all taught you that it don't exist. It's just magic tricks and illusions. And here, you see, I put the card behind my hand here. La 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 la. Look really impressive. And some of that shit is actually real, masked as, illusion. They're like, no, we can't give our secrets away. We totally did magic right in front of you, but we call it a magic trick is the cover. And then Darren Brown does that one a lot. I know, I see you, Darren, So yeah. I was just thinking, isn't it worth it to just have less covert murders? Fewer covert murders, fewer family separation, but this means you got to get rid of a lot of your junk laws too, where you're involving, your business and to other people's business where it don't belong, So people do that child protecting thing way beyond, their own family or circle of people that they know, and it's not to say you can't care about genocide and all these evils that go around. You can, because those people obviously didn't consent to being genocided, but there's a happy medium somewhere, a nice balance, if you'd say. And people having their family hook up with their brother and sister doesn't affect me whatsoever, so I'm not going to get so upset about it, so I'm not putting out that negative energy, which a lot of you Christians do put out a lot of negative energy. There's something about like love thy enemy or some shit like that. I don't know. So yeah, they'd say that I, cure the blind and everything. But and then they'll send me all their broken women and shit, and they're like, "Why isn't Chris healing them and everything?" And it's like, yeah, because it was like metaphoric. I help you see things that you guys can't. And whether you're willing to accept it or not, that's on you. But I just trying to help you guys see things that you guys can't. And maybe I have helped some with these couple videos. So anyway, just some food for thought, and you guys have a lovely day. And let's not try to worry about a reset. All right, let's just try to keep being ourselves and do better. Do better. A lot of that digital copy paste shit, is just endless shadows, endless distraction. If you guys didn't fucking make a big issue of it, they'll be like, oh shit, they're not divided and conquered this way. fuck, we're going to have to figure out something else to divide and conquer them on. I know, right? It's like, and you know what their hell is going to be? It's not what you think it's going to be. It really isn't. So they're like, you're going to burn forever and all eternity. Blah, 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 blah. No, no, not really. Especially if they didn't produce it, they just copy and pasted some stuff. They're like, okay, that we're going to kind of reflect that on you. It's not the hell that you thought it was, huh? Now that you think about it. Strange how that occurs. So, yeah, if we could just do better management, please, and just think more critically and deeply on these things and understand, the light and the dark are all part of God. And you guys everyone, the light side and the dark side, could all do a better job of managing these things because things aren't quite balanced here, is it? And that's why you're all pending a fucking reset. But I'm still hopeful that you guys could, come out all right. And your frequencies are low, but, the evil side should tone it down some. And so should the light side. And y'all could get along a little better, and this doesn't mean that there won't be things to hunt out there. All right, but there's a lot of good vampires out there. They don't really harm someone. They find consenting people and shit, and then they get murdered. And then you slap the righteous label on yourselves. You just, for the protection of others, I did something evil. That sounds like the evil rulers. They fucking go around terrorist. Everyone's a terrorist, even though they are. Just like the child protectors go pedo, and then they do something evil, and then they mask their fucking righteousness and protecting others, and y'all look so alike, so, maybe you'll all tone it down some and rethink and readjust, reprocess what you know, and, or not. I mean, whatever, you keep, throwing shit at yourselves and, endlessly, do the whack-a-mole thing endlessly, whatever, don't change. That's up to you. I can't really violate your free will. So just a suggestion, really. Anyway, so I think that's about it. Anyway, you guys could have a very lovely night.